Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 8 of the Halfords Formula Alpha Championship 2022. We're here at the Circuit of the Americas for this evening's racing, which is a fantastic track, I think. It's a really nice late Tilke circuit. Some elements of the track have been taken from other infamous circuits in the world, the likes of Turn 2 down to Turn 9, obviously being inspired by Beckett's, and then you have the technical Turn 12 through to Turn 19, many corners on this circuit, of course, all stitched together with some very long straights to really exercise the push-to-pass system on these RSS Supreme cars. Very powerful, very capable cars. We have just under 8 minutes to go in qualifying. Currently only 5 cars in the session rather, if you exclude myself, which you probably should. You don't want to see me out in the 75 Turbo at any point in time, but probably come last. But it is currently Alan Matthews who leads the qualifying session with a 1:44.690. P2 then behind him is, that is Will Inglis. Will Inglis, I can tell you, is a 1:44.851. And then we have Barry Clayton at 1:44.975. So relatively close in our mid-pack, if you can call it that. There's only 5 cars. So I suppose the mid-pack is really just 3. Will Inglis. Barry Clayton, rather. Apologies, there's a small bit of desync with the timing system going on here. And then we have Alex Smith in P4, 1:46.1, and then Paul Brady, 1:47.000. And I should mention as well, unfortunately, we didn't get any time with him on screen. Hopefully, we'll be able to rejoin towards the end of the session. It is Rob Whitney as well, a 1:46.956, which would see him leading the AM charge out of the 2 cars in this session so far. As we're on board now with Alan Matthews as he heads up into Turn 1. Turn 1, of course, usually one to watch out for, as you've got a whole field of cars at the start of a race ploughing their way down to that heavy braking zone at quite a rate of knots. The corner pinches back on itself and it increases in radius and kind of narrow. I'm miming to kind of explain it, but that's not very useful when you can't see what I am doing. But yes, the corner obviously turns in on itself and gets narrower as well, so it's a bit of a pinch point, if you will, and that can prove quite challenging for a number of drivers, as we've seen in the past, some incidents occurring at Turn 1. I doubt we're going to get that this evening with these RSS Supreme cars on what is quite a wide corner entry. We should be fine with 6 of us, but you never know. There could always be a bit of carnage. We're going to go on board actually with Alex Smith, as he is absolutely flying along at the moment. 2 personal best sectors, got a 1:46.12 beat. He's currently on track for that, I believe, unless he's really just gone slower through that final sector there. What, 1.9 seconds slower, is that? I'm not quite sure if that is correct, but I can tell you that Barry Clayton, out of nowhere actually, has just been able to take the provisional pole in this session. We've got just over 5 minutes to go now, and with losing out in Sector 1 and Sector 2, that's why we didn't go on board with it. We didn't think it was going to be that much of a spectacular act, but he absolutely nailed Sector 3. A 33.8 sees him go fastest out of anyone so far this evening, and he's looking to pull off the same trick, I believe, as we see Alex Smith coming towards the end of the circuit there. It's a 1:46.12, beating his previous 1:46.13, so a very small improvement for Alex Smith there, losing out through the final sector though. So has Barry Clayton unlocked the padlock that is Sector 3? Has he found the key to it? Has he absolutely nailed it and is now ahead of everyone else? We'll have to find out in just a moment. We're going to go back on board with him in a moment. We're going to go on board actually very quickly with Will Inglis. Will Inglis getting ready to start a new fast lap. He's just completing this out lap this very second, so we'll follow him and then catch Alan Matthews as he comes around Turn 8, Turn 17 and Turn 18. Will Inglis then heading up onto the first corner as wide as possible on entry before you just kiss the apex, and then back onto the loud pedal before you head down the steep elevation change there, and then enter the high-speed corners of the middle sector of this circuit. Well, it's really towards the first sector, really. It's quite a long first. In fact, what is the longest sector? I believe the longest sector is the middle sector on this circuit, actually. Losing out then through the first sector. Will Inglis at 27.2 through that first sector. We're going to actually just briefly jump on board with Alan Matthews, are we? Yes, we will, as we see Will Inglis has just caught the end of, got towards the end of the Beckett's-esque complex. As we watch now, Alan Matthews heading through that first corner, and it was actually, I can tell you on the previous lap, that was an out lap, so it was not an improvement in the final sector just like last time. Who else can we go on board with? I'll tell you what, we can go on board. We can go on board with Alan Matthews' back end getting out there. That is very aggressive indeed. He doesn't want to do that too much in the race, although those soft tyres will be struggling. Alex Smith, I believe, has a little bit of traffic in the form of Paul Brady. Paul Brady then potentially holding Alex Smith up. We'll have to see just how long. Apologies if you heard me jump there. I keep reptiles in the commentary box, and there was quite a large thump of one jumping about. So I do apologise if I seem slightly alarmed for a moment. All is well though, as Paul Brady then holding up. Is this Alex Smith potentially? No, I don't think he is. I think he's just judged it perfectly. He might in fact give Alex Smith a little bit of a tow down this straight, so it could be very handy indeed. Pulled up Brady then on the previous lap, 147.7, hasn't quite got near his 147 flat just yet. We've got just under 3 minutes in this session now. Barry Clayton still leading in the pits at the moment with that personal best second sector. Unfortunately, not enough, I believe, or some type of error meant that he had to abandon that lap. Meanwhile, the Drift King, Alan Matthews, heading around towards through the final sector now. In fact, about a tenth down on his previous best. He wants to try and take that provisional pole back away from Barry Clayton. There's only just under a tenth, or just over a tenth of a second rather, between the two. There is that 0.118 tenths off where he needs to be. Personal best for the middle sector though. Can he absolutely nail that final sector just like Barry Clayton did? He comes across the line. Is it enough? It's not, unfortunately. He loses out on that lap, or mid 145. In fact, that is nowhere near where he would like to be at this stage in qualifying. Who else is getting ready to head down towards the finish line then? It is, in fact, Paul Brady is the next car along there. You can see in the distance Alex Smith and Will Inglis. So good to see cars actually staying relatively close despite the relatively low turnout so far this evening. We've got a big circuit to occupy, so it'd be good if we could have as much action as possible on track. It is Paul Brady then leading this trio heading through turn 15 in just a moment. There we are, and looking very consistent. In fact, Paul Brady might not be up there with the pros in terms of outright pace. Of course, that is not really to be expected, but he is absolutely, I'd say, going along at quite a decent rate at the moment, setting himself up well for the race coming up in just a few minutes' time as he heads down towards the final sector now. In fact, we are in the final sector. In fact, we're in the final corner, turn 20, running down the start-finish straight. Then is it going to be enough for Paul Brady to improve? He doesn't, unfortunately, this time around. But coming up next, we have Alex Smith. He crosses the line. Does he improve? He does not, unfortunately, for him. Then we have Will Inglis. Does Will Inglis improve? No, he doesn't. So it seems to be the track, despite the fact it must have ramped up, maybe only 6 cars in the grid, track not ramping up enough, not rubbering in enough, and that is, unfortunately, no one seems to be on a bit of a charge at the moment in qualifying. As we see then, Alex Smith, Will Inglis heading through turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, of course. That is how race circuits work, but they all come in such quick succession here at COTA. We're going to go on board then with Alan Matthews as he heads towards the end of his latest fast lap. What will it be? He's going to lose out, I believe, on this one as well. Unfortunately for him, he was in the 145s as well. In fact, no one getting quite near Barry Clayton's best. He's just set his new best, a 144.572. That was his previous lap attempt. In fact, no, that was his previous registered lap attempt. He's had to abandon again. So towards the end of qualifying then, it's not looking good for anyone on track, I would say. Paul Brady then abandoning the session, feels that that is all he can do. I would like to mention, actually, it was only 500ths of a second between the runners in his qualifying session. That is the timer hitting 0. Now we're going to go on board with Will Inglis and Alex Smith. These two enjoying a little bit of a battle towards the end of this qualifying session, which is very good to see indeed. As we now head down through turn 14, rather make that turn 16, apologies. Alex Smith still leading the two then. Is he going to make any advancements on his previous time? It doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Bouncing over the sausage curb there. Of course, you want to be careful of that here at COTA. The curb can be quite dangerous as we now get back onto the start-finish straight. Alex Smith a little bit wide on entry. Is that enough? Is he going to lose out ever so slightly? He comes across the line there, and that is on the previous lap, a 146.6 for Will Inglis, a 144.9, not near his best, or about a tenth off his best rather. So Barry Clayton currently, as it stands, our pole sitter. Who can challenge him? Alan Matthews can challenge him. I believe these two did get across the line just in the nick of time, but this lap potentially not looking the tidiest for Alex Smith here as Will Inglis returns to the pit. We're going to go on board with Alan Matthews. Can he bring the very late charge towards Barry Clayton as he heads down towards turn 20, onto the brakes and back onto the throttle once again? He goes wide, he goes off the circuit, heading now down across the checkered flag for Alan Matthews. It is going to be a 144.5, which would have put him on pole position, but unfortunately, I think track limits there just about kicked him off. Unfortunately, that was potentially pushing just a little bit too hard. Unfortunately for him, that lap is not going to be valid. That means that Barry Clayton is crowned pole sitter for round 8 here at Koto. Don't go anywhere. We'll start in race 1 in just a few minutes' time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You join us here on the grid at COTA for race 1 with just under 30 seconds to go until lights out. It is Alan Matthews here on pole, Will Inglis P2, Alex Smith P3, Whitney all the way in the background there, P4, Paul Brady P5, I believe. I think we're missing someone. I just can't quite remember who, unfortunately. That is Barry Clayton we're missing. What a shame. Hopefully he's able to join in quick time, as we now have 6 red lights on the gantry. There is Barry Clayton. He has joined the session, which is good to see, and we are away. I believe that is Rob Whitney already deploying the push-to-pass system on the getaway. Alan Matthews then leading, heading into turn 1, but Will Inglis very late on the brakes is going to try and hang it around the outside. That isn't going to stick, though, unfortunately for him. He may have compromised himself there and potentially brought Alex Smith back into place. So Alan Matthews then leading as we head down towards the high-speed corners, and look at the cars snaking around this very technical part of the circuit. Clean getaway for all drivers involved. In fact, we have 5 cars on track at the moment. It is Alan Matthews who leads. So then as we head down towards turn 10 and turn 11 now, we see actually that we are actually keeping quite close together. In fact, it was quite interesting to see just how far away those poor AMs there, looking really rather lonely in the background there. Glad to see that they have caught up. Oh God, I need to amend my grammar there. As we head down towards turn 12 now, all cars trying to get that bit of slipstream off each other there. There we see Will Inglis trying to use it to the best of his abilities. He puts a bit of a switch back on potentially. Was looking up the inside there, but well defended by Alan Matthews. And there is Will Inglis, having put all that effort in, is now struggling to fight against Alex Smith. Alex Smith has been brought back into play all of a sudden, just hung back a little bit, and is now all of a sudden embroiled in a battle with Will Inglis. Has been around the inside of turn 14, turn 15 there. As we see, he has to concede the position, but not for long. He's still within 0.2 of a second. There's going to be plenty more overtaking opportunities for him as we head down towards turn 19, turn 20 coming up in just a moment. In the background, you see Paul Brady there. Don't count him out yet. I mean, he's already on the AM podium, of course. There is only 2 AM runners, but we might see him enjoying a bit of a battle in a moment if something goes wrong up ahead, which certainly don't count out here. As we see Alex Smith now heading up towards turn 1, just dropping off ever so slightly from Alan Matthews now. Actually, if you look there, I think the reason why his lap was, or rather he has dropped off a little bit, his lap was invalidated at the very last part there, so that might have cost him big time, which is a shame actually, because he was purple through Sector 2. And it'll be interesting to see why that is, actually, because we've seen in the past Alex Smith likes to run quite a lot of downforce on his car. He seems to be quite incongruent with the rest of the field and how much setup he is running, so maybe he's gone for a higher downforce setup, which should be benefiting him. Or no, rather, it'll be a low downforce setup that will be benefiting him in Sector 2. Of course, we haven't got any speed trap data on him just yet, but that will be very interesting to see indeed. This is, of course, actually one of the highest speed circuits that we visit on the entire calendar, with 300 kilometers an hour not unheard of, especially for the likes of Will Inglis, who is currently just topping the speed chart with 299 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, out in front, Alan Matthews is trying his best to extend his race lead here. 2 purple sectors at the moment before Will Inglis snatched that title from him. Absolutely dominating that fast middle sector there. And Barry Clayton has been able to rejoin, which is good to see. He's quickly catching up to the rest of the action. He is, of course, a lap down, but I'm sure if they are in a particularly racy spirit, they won't mind in getting involved in a bit of a battle with Barry. He is, of course, a pro runner, but he's a lap down as well. Of course, he is entitled to unlap himself. Alan Matthews there setting the fastest lap of the race so far, a 1:45.8. That wouldn't have been too shabby in qualifying, especially if we've had a few more cars in the field there, but very impressive charge indeed from Alan Matthews. But let's not forget Will Inglis. It's not like he's missed his opportunity and slowly backed away into obscurity in this race and kind of settled into P2 and maybe started to have to worry about the battle with Alex Smith. No, instead he has been doing his best to keep up with Alan Matthews. We saw towards the end of that lap he was actually about 1.5 seconds behind Alan Matthews, unfortunately, through this fast first sector there, towards the end of the first sector. Just looking at that understeer on his car there. I don't think the setup is quite playing into his hands here. I think he's gone for a very low drag configuration that is costing him big time. In fact, if we look at everyone else, yes, 282, 283, 281 kilometers an hour. for every other driver, so Alex Smith included in that, and then we have Whitney with 299 being his top speed, so he is quite clearly on a different, totally different race kind of strategy, if you will, almost, because this, of course, plays into this has a massive effect on how he looks after his tyres later on in the race. He won't be looking after them that well now, of course, the amount of scrubbing going on. Although he's putting less load through the car, he's understeering for every corner. That is not going to be helping tyre life there. But you see where he really makes the difference up. Towards the end of, by the time you're heading through turn 13, turn 14, he's already only 1.5 seconds away from Alan Matthews. So potentially what he's trying to rely on is a mistake from the likes of Alan Matthews through Sector 1 or Sector 3. I imagine if anywhere it's going to be Sector 1. It's so easy to mess up that technical kind of sequence of corners there at the start of the lap. And you can really cost yourself a big time because there's so much momentum that you've got to carry through that part of the circuit. That one small error can cost you throughout the rest of the running, and that might be what Will Inglis is trying to rely on, because of course he then has the pace advantage all the way down that very long back straight, and of course through the start-finish straight as well. He's currently 1.5 seconds behind Alan Matthews. It'll be interesting to see how the battle between these two plays out. Meanwhile, throughout the rest of the field has spread out slightly. We have about 3 seconds separating Will Inglis and Alex Smith. These cars do not look very easy at all to navigate through those high-speed corners from turn 3 down to turn 9. And then you have Alex Smith, Rob Whitney about 5 seconds down on Alex Smith, and then you have Paul Brady about 3 seconds behind Rob Whitney, and there is Barry Clayton unlapping himself. We're going to watch now, actually, as Will Inglis heads onto that long back straight, I say alongside, but not too far away from Alan Matthews. He was closer this time round. He managed to keep it within 1.5 seconds as he entered Sector 2. And there you see that low downforce, that slipstream actually starting to play to his advantage. He's now about 0.4 of a second behind Alan Matthews. All of a sudden, he is absolutely slingshot. It's like someone's fired a boomerang or something, just back towards Alan Matthews. He's now very much putting the pressure on, when just a lap ago it looked like he was almost kind of backing away. This is very impressive stuff from Will Inglis indeed. He'll have to watch for that tyre life, I am sure. I'm sure he's got that kind of bothering him in the back of his mind as he goes purple through the second sector, which is to be expected, I think, at this stage in the race. It's probably the type of sector that I would try and run. I know I'm not quick enough through the corners, not to say Will Inglis isn't, but I know that I am certainly not going to make the time up in the corners, in the bends, in the tricky stuff, so I'll just wait to do an absolute, just run a rocket ship basically. I did that actually in the TCR Championship once. It wasn't in the Juliettas, unfortunately, it was in some Seat Leons, and I'll just wait. I'd be pretty much rubbish in most of the circuits, wait until something like Donington comes along. Everyone else is still keeping a bit of wing. I would completely remove all of the wing, put the diff on a steady setting, and put some really quite aggressive settings on the tyres. Basically just force the tyres away round the 20-minute race. They'd be absolutely ruined by the end. But down the straight, you just make up all the advantage that you lose through the corners. It was surprisingly effective strategy. It very nearly worked for Will Inglis as well. We saw him going fastest lap in this race. He's now standing at about a second behind Alan Matthews here, and here's where he builds his advantage once again. This is must be almost kind of, you can almost taste, I think, the overtake that is threatening on Alan Matthews at this stage in the race. Now as we head down towards turn 12, he's using that push to pass system to try and slingshot his way past Alan Matthews. He's a little bit further back than he would want to be, I am sure. He's already setting himself up for the move, though. Can he make it stick from that far back? No, he can't. A lock-up for Alan Matthews doesn't make much of a difference at all. Well defended by the car in green in P1, as we now see Will Inglis has to settle for P2 for the moment. But I'm sure he's going to be putting on a bit of a charge in just a moment's time. He might lose time through turn 17, turn 18, but he'll be able to claw it back towards the end, the very end of the lap, the very start of the next lap, and then that back straight, I'm sure, will really help him along now, as we see Alan Matthews looking quite dynamic on the circuit now, using as much of the track as physically possible to try and keep Will Inglis at bay. Will Inglis currently registering as P1. I can tell you that is not the case. If you can use your eyes there, you can see that for yourself, but they are oh so close now as they start the next lap. There's nearly a second in it between the two, but to Will Inglis's favour rather, as you see him setting himself up for an overtake into P1. They are side by side. Alan Matthews doesn't want to give him any more room than he absolutely has to. He has compromised him there, not to say he's forced him off or anything, but he's had to work hard as Will Inglis to keep the car on track there. Unfortunately, when you hug the apex that much, it really affects the exit, and it certainly has done for him as we head now through turn 3 down to turn 9. They're now about 7/10 of a second apart as we head down towards turn 10 and turn 11 coming up next. Of course, these corners not really having names, it being a modern Tilka circuit, so we'll just have to go by the rather less personable turn 9, turn 10, turn 11, as we head now down towards the back straight here. As Alan Matthews is about 7/10 of a second ahead of Willingliss. That won't help his matters though, as he bounces over the curbs. The back end gets a little bit squirrely, and he's now about a second behind. He's got a little bit more work to do this time round, unfortunately for him, both using the push-to-pass system. And there you see in the background is Alex Smith, who's done a very good job actually throughout this race of keeping up with Willingliss and Alan Matthews. They've been pushing each other along, and he's been staying with them, ready to pounce if anything happens up front. We are 10 minutes into this race, just under half race distance, and it's certainly been very exciting indeed. Despite the fact we only have 6 cars on the grid, I would say it has done a very impressive job so far of delivering, has this race, as we now have a look at just a quick glimpse of what's going on in the AM running. Rob Whitney currently leads the AM race by about 2 seconds less, just under that actually, as Paul Brady keeping him honest at the moment. To compare their lap time, there's a 1:48.2 on the previous lap for Paul Brady, rather than 1:49.8 for Rob Whitney. I think there was a bit of an error there, but best laps, that goes to Rob Whitney. As we now go on board with Alan Matthews and Willingliss once again heading down towards turn 1. The gap staying pretty much consistent with what we've seen over the past couple of laps now as we head down sector 1. The 6/10 of a second between the two. This time Willingliss is going to try and go the long way around. It didn't work though. Will it work actually? As we see the back end on Alan Matthews' car stepping out as he rides over the curbs there. That allows Willingliss to keep him honest. Only about 3/10 of a second between them as we enter turn 3 here now. Building up that gap then ever so slightly as we head through the high-speed complicated corners. That of course is where Willingliss' car seems to be struggling. Not seems, it's fairly concrete at this point. That is where Willingliss loses out with his setup that he's running. He's about a second behind now. Here's where the longest race starts to come into effect. Here's where he can try and claw it back. 1.2 seconds. Is it further? Is this gap even bigger than it was just a couple of laps ago, or rather last lap, and then before that, a few laps before that? It's looking a little bit bigger, this gap this time. Are the tyres starting to come into play here? I think that could be the case, especially for the likes of Willingliss. His tyres have spent so long scrubbing along the surface of the racetrack. I believe this circuit is diamond cut as well, where it's got that kind of grooved surface in it, which certainly will not help tyre wear. And the 36-degree tarmac temperature also not helping tyre wear, although will help, I think, should help with the surface adhesion, which is could prove useful for some drivers as we go on board with Willingliss once again heading up towards turn 13 now, about 6/10 of a second behind Alan Matthews. It must just be Willingliss has got to pick his moment absolutely perfectly here. He doesn't want to mess up and cost himself a lot of time, because one small error could see him a few seconds down the road, and that will pretty much bring an end to his momentum in this race. But likewise, he's really got to capitalise on any kind of opportunity that he can, I'd say, if he's in with a shout of the overtake here at this race, because he needs to try and keep it as well. It's all well and good getting the overtake done, having the pace advantage to make the overtake work, and then it's another thing to keep that position, because Alan Matthews is going to have the upper hand through the end of sector 1. He's staying within a second though, is Willingliss. Of course, not quite as close as we've seen at this stage in the lap on some previous laps, which could be costing him, but we'll find out in due course whether or not that is all he needs to do, as the back end just stepping out there, and that has cost him a lot of time now. Nearly 2 seconds between Alan Matthews and Willingliss, who is the fastest car on circuit at the moment. I can tell you on his best laps it is Willingliss. I fear his best laps may be behind him. In that case, it's Barry Clayton who's the fastest car on track at the moment, doing his best to unlap himself. He's currently catching up to the rest of the pro field, doing a very good job of it actually, given circumstances. We're at half race distance. He's got about half a lap to catch up as well. No, he doesn't. He's got about a lap to catch up, unfortunately. I was going to say he may be able to unlap himself in this race. Of course, it'll still take away a good number of points. With 6 cars on the field, everyone will be taking away a good set of points here. It will really help them in the championship standings, which we'll brief you on in just a moment's time. Meanwhile, though, in the AM running, Paul Brady and Rob Whitney are enjoying a bit of a battle here. Rob Whitney's going to be defending the inside as we head down towards turn 12, and that has worked out well for him. The brake disc glowing red hot as they stamp on the brakes to try and slow the cars down from near enough makes no difference, 200 miles an hour to pretty much 30, I think, the slowest corner on the circuit, really stressing those those brake discs out, and Rob Whitney, I'm sure, feeling pretty stressed out himself as he has Paul Brady for company here heading into turn 13. Meanwhile, what's going on at the front end of the field? They're still within a second of each other, but that's not what we're focusing on at the moment. We are very much enjoying the battle for the AM lead here, very much enjoying the battle for this AM race as he heads his way down towards turn 20, being very wary, of course, both drivers, of those sausage curbs on the inside. They will absolutely send your car flying, will those sausage curbs. Not a pretty sight to behold, and certainly can ruin a race. As we head up to turn 1 now, the gap ever so slightly bigger than it was before. Let's see now, difference in setup between these cars. It looks to be that Paul Brady carrying just a slight tad more downforce, essentially. That could be placebo effect, that could just be me making things up. They could be running the same setup. It's certainly not unheard of. I think most drivers are pretty much running the same setup at this stage, although this is of course an open setup championship. Drivers are free to change their setups to best suit their needs, best suit their driving styles as they see fit. Most drivers, of course, will be sharing a relatively similar style, given, of course, we are a single chassis championship. As we see now, the battle between these two still going on, just a little bit further apart between the two, although Rob Whitney not helping himself there as he goes off the circuit, brings Paul Brady right back into contention. Now we're going to go on board with Rob Whitney, watch this lead battle from the lead position as we head down towards turn 12 with these drivers. I'm just noticing that Will Inglis, Alan Matthews slightly further apart than you were on the past few laps. We have less than 10 minutes to go in this race. This race has absolutely flown by, it must be said, now as we head towards the end of the lap with these two drivers. So at this stage in the race, it would be a good idea to give you a brief update on the championship standings from the previous round. Of course, these will update live as things go on, as the race weekend progresses, with the race 2, the reverse grid race, coming up later on this evening. We'll give other drivers a chance to enjoy life at the top end of the field, and of course we will update you on the championship standings after the end of race 1 during that race as well. So currently it is Alan Matthews who leads the championship by about 40 points now, a relatively comfortable margin at this stage, but certainly something that he can't rest on his laurels just yet. But 193 points for our race leader. Alan Matthews sees him leading the championship. Then we have where it gets interesting, must be said, P2 in the standing. Has someone gone off there? No, just a bit of dirt from Alex Smith's car. Alex Smith in P2, 159 points. P2 in the championship, P3 in the race. Then we have only 2 points behind, P2 in the race, P3 in the standings, Will Inglis, 157 points for him. So this order will switch around as we enter race 2, the reverse grid race. So that'll be very interesting to see how that championship dynamic changes, how those two carry on their battle. Then we have P4 in this race, Rob Whitney. He is currently leading the AM charge by a very comfortable margin indeed. He's doing an absolutely fantastic job of leading the AMs this year, and looks to be bringing it home, it must be said, as we now go on board with Paul Brady. Paul Brady then has done a good job of clawing his way back throughout the standings, it must be said. He will finish this weekend, certainly, in P3 in the standings, eclipsing Guy Swarbrick then. So Paul Brady currently P5 in this race, P4 in the AM running, soon to be P3. And then we have Barry Clayton, P6 in this race at the moment. Some technical issues, I believe, unfortunately not allowed again to join in the nick of time. 141 points to his name, P4 in the standings, P6 in this race. I should mention, actually, there is Alex Smith going fastest for him so far. I should mention that it is Rob Whitney on 252 points, and then we have Paul Brady on 152. So after 8 rounds, there's still not some massive caverns between the drivers as we've seen in the past. Some still plenty of close racing action to be enjoyed at some stage. But I want to mention actually that Alan Matthews, who we haven't watched too much in this race, and that's a complete lie, we have spent plenty of time watching Alan Matthews in this race. He has been enjoying the lead though. He is currently on for a bit of a flyer. He has just gone purple in Sector 1 at 26.8. That is clear of everyone else. Everyone else kind of hovering around the 27.0 mark. He's trying to extend his gap to Will Inglis, that car that is charging on him, hunting him down, using that push-to-pass system, heading down the back straight. You see the gap just about closing up there. But on the previous lap, a 145.251. Was that his best lap? That was his best lap, but he went invalid towards the end, so it's completely wrong there. His last lap at 145.4. That's what Alan Matthews is looking to try and beat. What might be helping him trying to beat that is the fact that Willingless is very much hunting him down now as we head towards the end of the lap. There's just over half a second between the two cars rather, and they are enjoying their battle very much, I would say. Bouncing over the curbs, then heading into turn 19, turn 20, the last corner to negotiate on this lap. The gap standing at about 0.8 of a second. Apologies, I've been blowing out the mic a little bit in this race. We run down the start-finish straight, and it is a 1:45.292 on that previous lap for Alan Matthews. So very close, but not quite as impressive as his previous lap. Willingless, meanwhile, staying within 0.6 of a second, 0.4 of a second as we enter the first corner. I have a feeling, though, that gap will slightly expand as we head into the fast part. The fast technical cornering section of this circuit. On board then at the moment with Willingless. He's sat in P2 for quite a while in this race. On a number of occasions has looked like he's been ready for the overtake. At the very first lap, of course, he was side by side, his nose just about edging out in front for the first couple of laps, and then elsewhere in the race has looked very close indeed, within a few tenths of a second. Unfortunately for him, hasn't quite worked out, but he's done a very good job of keeping up with Alan Matthews. Good to see often Willingless, we know, doesn't have the best luck in his racing. Good to see a late on charge in this championship has very much brought him back into contention, very much brought him back at the top end of the field where he belongs, as Alex Smith invalidates a lap. There's contact between Willingless and Alan Matthews after such a long time of clean racing. Unfortunately, they came together at some point, and what we see there is Willingless very courteously backing up to allow Alan Matthews to continue on in the lead of this race. Unfortunately for him, commentator's curse really coming into effect there. I was just saying about how this race has gone quite well for him, and then within the span of a corner, he has a collision and then loses the position to Alex Smith. I'm very sorry, Will. That is completely my fault. There may be an angry message off him at some point later on in the WhatsApp group, in which case I will pledge, as I have for a number of drivers now, to just quite simply never show you on the stream again, because that seems to be the best way to avoid a bit of a calamity. And there's further calamity there. Contact between Alex Smith and Willingless. Willingless taking his position back. Both cars using that push to pass system now as we head down towards turn 12. Willingless back in P2 where he has sat for so long in this race. A time within less than 3 minutes. However, though, banging wheels on the overtake. Alex Smith goes down the inside to take P2 back. P2 then going to Alex Smith in this race. Very late on indeed, but Willingless certainly wants that position back. A very late lunge up the inside there. That gap certainly was going to fit a car. He decided it was, though, as we now head towards the end of the lap. Alex Smith sat in P2 at the moment. There is Barry Clayton as well. The car trying to unlap himself. He's very close to doing so, actually. He's got an impressive amount of pace underneath him. He's demonstrated that throughout this race so far. He's certainly setting himself up well for the reverse grid race coming up in just a few moments' time. But all of a sudden, towards the very end of this race, there is plenty of action to be talking about here. Alex Smith currently sat in P2, 1.2 seconds behind Alan Matthews, race leader. Willingless probably kicking himself for being so sportsmanlike and allowing Alan Matthews to continue on. He finds himself now on the bottom step of the podium and will, I'm sure, be fighting tooth and nail till the very end of this race to try and get back up to at least P2. I'm sure if you asked him now, he'd certainly be quite happy with P2. He's probably quite frustrated beforehand, but would now be jumping at the opportunity to take that position back. But Alex Smith seems to be looking quite comfortable out there. I think that is an overtake that Alex Smith has been waiting to make for a long time. He hasn't been looking to make it on track. I don't think he's been looking to make it via brute force, but he's been watching the battling going on in front of him for quite a long time and just thinking, one small mistake, I could soon find myself in P2, and he is for the moment, but will he for much longer? Because here is a very charged up Will Inglis getting ready to head down onto the back straight with that low aero setup on his car. There's currently about 0.5 of a second separating those two cars as we enter the corner. Here we see the push-to-pass system surely being deployed now on both cars. In fact, no, make that just Alex Smith's car, neutralising the effect of Will Inglis's low aerodynamic drag here. They are near enough side by side, but Will Inglis is going to have to go the long way around if he wants this to stick. Later on the brakes, will it work? No, but he's now setting himself up to the inside of turn 13 here, as we see now defending, and he got the opportunity for a switchback. In fact, does he? Yes, he does. He can box him off here, but Alex Smith, of course, now having the outside, or the inside rather. Apologies, it was getting just a little bit confusing. There's plenty to be talking about here, but Will Inglis now up the inside, heading into turn 16, takes the position back from Alex Smith, but I think he's going to have to work for it once again now as we head towards the end of lap, turn 19. And it looks like it could be a little bit more comfortable for Will Inglis. Meanwhile, it's certainly more comfortable for Alan Matthews, who is breaking away into the distance there, as you can see. Now standing at about 3 seconds clear of the rest of this field. But Will Inglis then takes back P2 just as the timer hits 0. We are now on the penultimate lap of what has been a very exciting race indeed. Will Inglis goes wide. Will Inglis goes wide, and Alex Smith potentially thinking he can get the overtake done, but unfortunately for him, bounces over the curbs and the back end steps out. That pretty much negates any advantage he was about to take away from this. Meanwhile, in all of this, Barry Clayton's saying, come on, stop your battling, I've got the pace here, I want to unlap myself. I doubt with 2 laps you'll be able to get the car around to battle for the positions on track, but you never know. It's a very impressive drive from Barry Clayton so far this evening, and of course he will be well set up, as we've already mentioned, for the reverse grid race coming up in just a few moments time then. So Will Inglis, as we head down towards the back straight, has that low drag setup to assist him. Will he have enough push to pass though to use, or can he basically stave off Alex Smith as we head towards the later stages of this race? Remaining on board then with Alex Smith. He's about 0.7 of a second behind Will Inglis. Will Inglis resigning, or I'm sure settling for, not even settling, probably quite happy with P2 at this point, given how much that appeared to be in jeopardy. Meanwhile, speaking of in jeopardy, we're going to have to go on board with the AM runners once again. Rob Whitney, his lead of the AM race, is looking once again in jeopardy. He's been quietly having to put the work in to defend it against Paul Brady. Quite a good battle going on between these two here as we head down towards the later part of the lap with these cars. We have now started the final lap, so at some stage we will have to go on board with Alan Matthews to celebrate what has been a fantastic race for him. But Rob Whitney will also, I'm sure, be worthy of congratulations if he can keep the race race lead for the AM running here. Going a little bit wide then, Paul Brady get ready to stamp onto the throttle to try his best to boomerang towards Rob Whitney as we go on board with Alan Matthews. Where is Alan Matthews now? He's heading into turn 10 in just a moment. Here we are. But also want to give mention to what's going on between Will Inglis and Alex Smith. They are still very close indeed, and I'm sure we're going to be trading blows once again towards the end of the back straight. So we're going to stay on board with these two cars, being wary of Alan Matthews just in the background there. Is that Alex Smith's car getting a little bit unsettled on entering the back straight? No, it's not. We're looking all good in the hood for Alex Smith and Will Inglis, quite clean as we enter the back straight here. And in fact, Will Inglis looking a little bit further up the road this time round, being very aggressive with the sausage curve there. Be lucky they didn't enter the stratosphere with that one. However, he is looking quite safe indeed. Well, relatively speaking, his nearest opponent is still within a second and hunting him down, but that is about as comfortable as he can expect to get at this stage in this race. And Alan Matthews also looking quite comfortable, although I must say P2 and P3 have done a very impressive job of catching up at this late stage in the race. Maybe the tyres starting to drop off, but that doesn't matter for Alan Matthews because he navigates turn 20 for one final time in race 1. stamps on the throttle and comes across the line to take the race 1 victory. Whitney comes home P2, Alex Smith a very close P3. Barry Clayton classified P4 there, and there we have Rob Whitney defending from Paul Brady now as we head down towards the final part of the lap, heading round the long right-hander of turn 17, turn 18, where you've really got to find the balance between the aero load on the car and how much speed you want to carry. And Paul Brady potentially finding the limit of that, going a little bit wide but able to rejoin the circuit. That means that Rob Whitney will become going with a comfortable race 1 victory in the AM running. Congratulations, Rob, for P1 there, and Paul Brady coming home P2. That was certainly a very exciting outing here at the Circuit of the Americas for race 1. Don't go anywhere, because in just a few minutes we'll be getting ready to join the reverse grid action, and I am sure we'll deliver as much as race 1 has. I just want to have a quick look to see if anyone's going to be enjoying any donuts. I think we will. I think we're going to wait until race 2. I've noticed now in the comms, everyone is now very much on Reeve Donut Watch, which is good. That's a good thing. You should be. As we dive into the pits and get ready for race 2, the reverse grid race coming up in just a few minutes' time, so don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen, here on the grid at the Circuit of the Americas. We are ready for the reverse grid race. I can tell you that is Barry Clayton on pole position. Then we have Alex Smith P2, Whitney P3, and Alan Matthews P4. And then if you can just use your binoculars, maybe get a small observatory out, and you can look in the background and see that it is Paul Brady P5, Rob Whitney P6 or P2 in the AM running here. Well, race 1 certainly delivered us very interesting, very exciting race indeed, and hopefully we'll get the same in this reverse grid race, giving Barry Clayton perfect opportunity to try and show us what he is made of here at COTA with these high-speed corners and very long straight. It is 6 red lights on the gantry. Some cars already ready with that push-to-pass system. Alex Smith very eager indeed, and we are away. A lot of wheel spin for some cars there, especially the likes of Alex Smith. I would say he lost out on the start. Barry Clayton eventually getting away with decent pace. However, Alex Smith is going to have a look up the inside later on the brakes and gets the move done. Fantastic move by Alex Smith. Barry Clayton losing out then at the very start. There's contact between Alan Matthews and Paul Brady, I believe. What is going on there? It is Paul Brady currently in P6 at the moment, so Rob Whitney able to get that position back away from him. Alex Smith currently leading the race, Barry Clayton P2, and then we have Alan Matthews P3 and Will Inglis P4. So I'm going to go on board with the action at the front end of the field. There's a fly that is annoying me in the commentary box once again, so if you hear some random clapping, I'm not applauding, some fantastic overs there because I think I'm trying to get rid of a very obnoxious fly. However, we're on board with Barry Clayton as he takes that position back, under braking up the inside from Alex Smith as we head down the back straight with Barry Clayton in the lead once again. Fantastic effort from him to get that position done into turn 10 and in fact turn 11 rather, and in fact we see that Alan Matthews and Will Inglis, they're all now side by side, pretty much 3 wide there. Who's going to be chickening out? Who's going to be latest on the brakes? I believe it is Alex Smith actually, who in the end is able to get back into P2. A lock up for Alan Matthews, sees him go wide and he loses out to Will Inglis. Even Will Inglis now into P3, Alan Matthews P4. Very interesting development between these two indeed, as we see near enough side by side for Alan Matthews and Will Inglis as we head round turn 17, turn 18 here. Alan Matthews in fact being forced, or not even being forced really if you will, but going just a little bit wide as we head down towards turn 20 once again. In fact, who is that going wide? That is Rob Whitney going wide. That could cost him big in his race in the AMS. As we've seen now that Paul Brady's going to be up the inside heading round turn 20. In fact, the back end gets away from him. He tries to correct his error, I think, riding over the curbs and sees himself facing the wrong direction, and he's having difficulties getting that car facing the right direction. I think he's pretty much wedged in a wall. What a shame. That appears to be an end to his race. What else is going on in the field? Well, I can tell you that Alan Matthews and Will Inglis are battling it out, and Rob Whitney, unfortunately, there is confirmation, is unable to finish this race, which is a great shame. It does, however, mean that Paul Brady doesn't have to worry too much about how he does in this race. He's going to take away some very much appreciated, I'm sure, 25 points. As we see Will Inglis then about 2.5 seconds away from the lead of the race, and about for a brief moment about half a second ahead of Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews really not going his way this reverse grid race, doing exactly what was intended. He pretty much, well, didn't dominate, but had control of the first race, and now sees himself right at the back of the pro running. We only have 5 remaining cars in this session, which I believe despite the amount of action that we have. And then we go on board with Alex Smith. He's just at a purple first sector in his efforts to catch up to Barry Clayton. He's now just over a second, and we'll be doing his best to catch up to Barry Clayton. Of course, we didn't get to see Barry Clayton really challenging for the lead owing to the technical issues that he had, but we knew, watching his pace lapping, he was certainly within a shout of taking it here in the reverse grid race, or certainly keeping it here in the reverse grid race. Remaining on board then with Alex Smith, he's currently about 0.7 of a second ahead. Make that 0.8, maybe make that less. In fact, I think Will Inglis had a bit of an error. What was that to do? I think that was the back end stepping out away from him as Barry Clayton sets the fastest lap of this race so far, doing his best to try and extend his lead out much in a similar way to how Alan Matthews played his race. As we see then, Will Inglis about 0.8 of a second ahead of Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, as I mentioned, really not where he'd want to be, I'm sure, in this race. Just want to give mention, actually. One I've only really just noticed this nice little detail on Barry Clayton's car. I would like to, but there's still appears to be plenty of action going on between the likes of Will Inglis and Alan Matthews, as Alan Matthews doing his best to keep Will Inglis honest here, as we see Whitney actually dipping onto the dirt a little bit. Has he forced an error? Has Alan Matthews, is this Alan Matthews' strategy? Is he going to just start putting the pressure on from behind to try and get those cars in front of him to tumble away? It's certainly what worked for Alex Smith against Willing Gliss, or rather, it's certainly Willing Gliss cracking under pressure allowed Alex Smith pass, and Willing Gliss really had to work for that P2 in the end, which now Alex Smith possesses once again. This is very similar indeed in some ways to race 1, as we see Alan Matthews getting very close to the rear wing of Willing Gliss's car as we head down towards turn 12. But he isn't quite able to get the move done. He is going to have to settle for where he sits at the moment. He's only about 4 tenths behind us, so certainly don't count him out just yet. Very close then between these two cars as we head through turn 20. Once again, get ready to start another lap. All 4 pro runners staying within. I'll just get the numbers for you in just a second, as they're all pretty much setting fastest laps. They've absolutely been on a bit of a storm here on that previous lap. They're within 3 seconds. A fantastic effort from all of the pro runners as we see Barry Clayton still leading for the moment, and that he has the well, pretty the second biggest margin actually, the next being between Alex Smith and Whitney. So we can be a quartet. We're currently a couple of duos, but don't imagine that for a second this show won't become a big quartet towards the crescendo, if you will, towards the very end. As we see 6 tenths of a second now between these cars. The gap's building up ever so slight, but still very close indeed. 2.8 seconds covering all 4 cars. A very impressive feat indeed. Just want to give mention actually to, we might see as it comes past now, a fantastic angle in fact to watch the action on Barry Clayton's car. His brake calipers matching very nicely indeed with the livery on his car, although brake calipers for me currently a bit of a touchy subject. I've been trying to recommission my old, I know this is going to be, I feel dirty just saying it, my old E46 BMW 330, my old BMW. I've been trying to recommission that and getting it back on the road. The Alfa's been absolutely bulletproof, reliable recently. The Beamer's been one with the issue, so I thought I'd just get a new set of brakes on it and get it back on the road. I will the Beamer. Unfortunately, it has been nothing but misery trying to get some of those bolts off. They are those German bolts getting rather rusty, I'd say, over the years on the roads, and that has been much of a challenge indeed. Much like Alex Smith had a bit of a challenge heading through turn 19 there, as we get back onto the start-finish straight. Whitney about 7 tenths of a second behind him now, very close indeed. Whitney certainly helping himself by setting the fastest lap of the race so far. In fact, is that the fastest lap we've seen throughout the race sessions? We might have seen all 44.5. Although I believe that was a quali pace, but that was a 44.999, so about as close as you want to be to the 45s, yet still be in the 44s. In fact, you can't be any closer. And Whitney really timing that right, because Alex Smith having that small error meant there's only about 3 tenths of a second at any given moment between the cars, although that does drop off when we head through the high-speed corners. Whitney obviously still on that drag racer setup. He's not the only one, however. It clearly caught the attention of Alan Matthews, because I must say, he's absolutely flying along at the moment through the straights. 295 kilometers an hour in terms of top speed. So he's either had a tweaking setup, or this is the first time that we've seen his car run in a bit of a slipstream and push to pass. You see the cars in synchronization, flashing those green intake lights to show that they are using that bit of overboost to try and bring each other closer together. Alan Matthews then settling a purple sector 1. He's on an absolute charge at the moment, rivaled only by the car in front, but I have a feeling if things go well for him on this lap rather, he might take that crown away from Whitney, feeling that Whitney is also embroiled in a battle with Alex Smith as we speak, as we see them now heading through the next set of corners, turn 16, turn 17 and turn 18. Can you believe this is considered 3 corners at this part of the circuit? It really should just be the 1. You could probably get rid of, I reckon, about 4 corners on this circuit, 4, maybe 5 corners. It'd be a 16 corner circuit, but no, it's 20 instead. It's not as bad as Singapore though, although at least that's justified. As we see now the 4 pro runners, 2.5 seconds separating them as we get onto the start-finish straight once again. There was confirmation Alan Matthews was on a bit of a charge there, 26.9 9.6 through the first sector, which is by far and away, I think, the fastest we've seen out of any race session this weekend. As he's trying to find a way past Willing Gliss is Alan Matthews. Willing Gliss is going to have to refocus himself and probably think about more on the defensive side as he tries to keep Alan Matthews at bay. And then it was a personal best in sector 2 for Alan Matthews, just to get back to that. And then we have the sector being deleted because he just completed the first sector of this lap. So apologies, you'll never get to know just how good that purple sector was on the previous lap for Alan Matthews. I can tell you it was good, given that it was purple. However, Willing Gliss sees himself half a second ahead of Alan Matthews, a second behind Alex Smith, and Barry Clayton is romping away with it at the moment. He's looking very comfortable indeed. I say very good. 2 seconds. It's certainly not insurmountable with just over half race distance to go. We will, of course, explore the championship standings as they stand at the moment when we enter the second half of the race. But the first half has certainly been exciting enough that we haven't had the chance to do that just yet, as Willing Gliss is looking to try and find his way past it. He's in a bit of a halfway house at the moment. Does he try to keep Alan Matthews at bay, or does he try to catch up to Alex Smith? I think the best course of action for him is probably exactly what he's thinking in the cabin right now. Not that I'm a psychic or anything. He's probably thinking just charge towards Alex Smith and pretend Alan Matthews isn't there, because you'll effectively be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So he'll be trying to keep Alan Matthews at bay by trying to get past Alex Smith, and then he can think about using Alex Smith as a bit of a buffer zone. They could, Alan Matthews and Willing Gliss, if they were thinking like endurance drivers, choose to work together maybe and try and tackle the issue of Alex Smith. I don't think that will happen. I think they'll be far too consumed by enjoying the battling going on track at this very moment. As we see Barry Clayton actually not breaking away from the rest of the field as much as I thought he would. He's about 1.1 seconds ahead of Alex Smith, so don't count out a bit of a charge from Alex Smith here, as Alex Smith does in fact get a lap time invalidated in the previous lap. What has gone on for Alex Smith's car there? He is now just under half a second, in fact, ahead of Willing Gliss. I think he went wide. Where will that be? That was either turn 3 or turn 5. I can't quite work out where that was, unfortunately. I do apologise. But all cars now seem to be going a little bit wide. They seem to be dipping onto the dirt just a little bit. That could be costing them. Certainly helping Barry Clayton's case. I think that was Willing Gliss's second car to dip onto the dirt, because Alan Matthews is looking all over the gearbox of his car there, it must be said, as they now start to use that push-to-pass system to try and find their way past. Of course, pretty much neutralise it against each other, both using it at the same time. That is one of the more interesting aspects of this series. There are many, of course. Oh, so there's an interesting one. Very late lunge from Alan Matthews. I was rather caught out by that one, if you couldn't tell. But it was going to try and find the long way around there. Unfortunately for Alan Matthews, that was quickly an opportunity that was closed off, so he has to remain in P4 for the time being. I can't remember what point I was making. Yes, it was about push to pass. I was whittering on about something else. Push to pass, obviously a very interesting element to this series. Drivers only have a certain amount of deployment to use per lap, so they have to choose it wisely. They have to choose where on the lap they think it is most beneficial. So it might not be best to just hit the button at the same time as all your rivals do on the back straight. It might be better to think maybe use it here, for example, running up towards the checkered flag, because then you can try and put that power down where they aren't able to, and you never know, you might get yourself an overtake. And Alan Matthews trying to get himself one here as he looks up the inside of turn 1, but that pinch effect that I was talking about in qualifying working against him, and sees him remaining in P4 for the time being. He's still only half a second behind, so certainly anything could happen from here. These two are very close indeed. As we saw in race 1, there's some impeccable racecraft really between these drivers. Really highly talented, really skilled, really respectful as well, to be able to go on for 25 minutes within a second of each other with very little in the way of issues. And when there are issues, we saw in race 1 just how sportsmanlike they are, and we are, of course, owing to that sportsmanship from Willing Gliss, shown a fantastic battle in the end, because Alex Smith said, "Thank you very much. I'm taking P2 away from you, and I'm going to enjoy a phase of my race that I don't think anyone was expecting." It was really a turning point in that race, if you will. Let's see if we'll get anything like that in this race. We've got only just over 10 minutes to go already. Alex Smith currently busy setting purple sectors. He's very busy indeed in the cockpit of that car. Let's see what he can do as he tries to keep Willing Gliss, Alan Matthews at bay, and potentially tries to keep Barry Clayton honest, of course. This is now the stage, about 11 minutes, 10 minutes ago, this is now the stage where the tyres start to think about dropping off. They might start to run out of grip, of course. I haven't seen really any usage in the Formula Alpha series of anything other than that soft tyre, really. But we also see the fuel loads getting lighter and maybe the balance of the car changing, so that's one thing the drivers have to watch that they're not caught out by. But I can tell you that the purple sectors are very evenly distributed there. Barry Clayton takes Sector 3, purple, 34.1. Alex Smith takes Sector 1, purple, 26.7, and Whitney takes Sector 2, purple, 43.2. If those three, if they'd stitched that lap together, all three taking those purple sectors, that would have been an absolute fly. Can I think an absolute fly? Given my math skills, probably not. No, it's easy to go anyway. So there we have 17. You've now tuned into Maths Watch. I can't because the seconds have been taken away from me, but it would have been good, believe me. And speaking of good, we're on for a good battle here. It's about 2/10 of a second now between Whitney and Alan Matthews as they head through turn 10 and turn 11. They have pretty much been on each other this entire race now. Really, Alan Matthews, Whitney is this revenge for race on Whitney? This is kind of Alan Matthews' undoing in this race. It might not be for much longer though. They're near enough side by side now. Both have a similar amount of aero, both using the push to pass system. Who is going to come out on top here as we head down towards turn 12 here? There's going to be a little bit of a jousting going on almost as they puff their shoulders out and say there's no chance you're getting past Sunshine. Unfortunately for Alan Matthews, that seems to be the case for now as Whitney remains in P3 for now, about 4/10 of a second ahead of Alan Matthews with just under 10 minutes to go in this race, which seems like, well, I was about to say it seems like the perfect time to give you an update on the championship standings. However, I don't think any time would be because the battling is just so good in the race. However, we're going to do that now. We're on board with Alan Matthews, P4 in this race at the moment. He was P1 in the previous race and he's P1 in the standings, extending his championship lead now to 218 points, the first driver into the 200-point mark. Quite late on in the series to be getting into the 200-point mark, so just goes to show just how even some of this racing has been. Then we have Whitney, currently P3. He's closing up the gap towards the end of this race as things stand at the moment. 175 points to his name. He's P2 in the championship standings. Then we have P3 in the championship standings is Alex Smith. He's jumped up quite nicely there, 174 points, only 1 point behind Will Inglis. It'd be good to see him have a decent championship this season. And then we have Barry Clayton, unfortunately, of course, not taking any points away from the previous race owing to his situation. He's 153 points to his name, currently P5 in this race, P4 in the standings. And then when we go to the, sorry, that's Andrew Rammer on board with that at the moment. There is, I found Barry Clayton. Eventually, he will take 25 points away from this race, though, if things stay the way that they are looking at the moment, which will be a very impressive feat indeed. And then we have, to round out the extensive list of AM runners remaining in this session, Paul Brady. Sorry, Paul. We haven't seen too much of you in this car, or in this race rather, at all, because you've just been quietly lapping along because there's not much else you can do. Really, you're just having a nice time out there, and I hope you are enjoying some of the sights of Texas as you lap by. Yeah, there's not too much else to say about your race, really, Paul. Keep going out there, enjoy yourself. But I can tell you that Paul is currently P3 in the championship standings for the AM running level pegging with Guy Swarbrick at the moment, and in fact, only 20 points behind Paul Millman. And of course, Paul Brady will be taking a race victory from this race too here, the reverse grid race. So that means he'll be 5 points ahead of Paul Millman, and Paul Brady will slingshot himself from P4 in the AM running to P2 with a 5-point gap between him and Paul Millman. So Paul Millman, I'm sure, will be wanting to do his best to try and jump into the final few races this season with his game face on, because we're on for a bit of a battle for P2 in the AM running. Speaking of battling, there's a second between Alex Smith and Barry Clayton. Alex Smith has been able to drop the charge from the cars behind there as he bounces over all of the soft curbs. In fact, I think he's using them as targets through the end of Sector 1 there in an effort to catch up to Barry Clayton. It has cost him. He's within a second. He's now 1.5 seconds behind Barry Clayton there. But somebody who's not 1.5 seconds behind is Alan Matthews behind Will Inglis. There's only 4/10 of a second separating them. And it's going to be to the wire as we enter turn 12 once again, because they're going to be pretty much level pegging. Not that I'm trying to bore you or anything or try to spoil the race for you. I'm just saying that it's a pattern forming here. There's a very close bit of action going on between these two at all stages of this race, but in particular this part of the circuit, as they are now side by side, both using that push to pass system. Alan Matthews has the inside here. Who's going to be later on the brakes? It is Will Inglis, and he defends the position. Will Inglis currently P3 in the running, P3 in the pro running rather. He currently on for a podium here. Alan Matthews, though, going purple through that second sector. So it seems to me that Alan Matthews has the upper hand through the middle sector of this circuit. We have just over 5 minutes to go now in this race. There's 0.4 of a second separating them. Some very close action going on here at COTA, ladies and gentlemen. Back on board once again with Whitney and Alan Matthews as they head up towards turn 1. There's only a couple of car lengths between them and make that 0.3 of a second as we enter turn 1. That pinch point, which has caught drivers out on a couple of occasions so far this evening. Can it catch anyone else out? I don't think it can. They were looking quite calm, ready for that one. But I was wrong, actually. I'm sure Whitney's not calm at all there, with Alan Matthews just sat on the curb, occupying his right rear view mirror there. Very close indeed, only 0.3 of a second now as we enter the final 5 minutes of this race. We do, of course, have a couple of laps after that one. I just want to give a mention, actually, in terms of outright pace at the moment, fastest car on circuit, that accolade goes to Barry Clayton at 1:44.9 is his best lap of the race, and is in fact identical to Alan Matthews's in terms of last lap. In terms of current pace, 1:45.005 for Barry Clayton, 1:45.005 for Alan Matthews. Just goes to show how competitive this field is. I say field, it's more small collection at this stage, but it has certainly provided some very interesting racing indeed. I hope watching back you enjoy watching it as much as I've enjoyed commentating it. It just goes to show, even without the raft of cars that we usually have turning up, we can still have a very enjoyable evening's worth of racing. I hope that has felt throughout I hope that feeling is shared among the participants as well. It'd be very good to get the feedback on that. Not saying more of you shouldn't turn up more often, of course you will. Everyone should get involved. If you haven't got involved and you think about getting involved, we're heading towards the end of this season's running, of course, so why not jump in for 2023? No, it would be a perfect opportunity to. I will be pushing the recruitment just a little bit more towards the end of this season's. Why not get involved if you haven't already? If you're just a kind of a casual viewer, why not jump in? It'll be a good laugh, and it's a fantastic evening of racing as we go on board once again with Will Inglis, about 1.2 seconds separating him and Alan Matthews. That gap looking a little bit more comfortable than it has on previous occasions, but I'm sure it will close up at some point or another within this final few minutes, and they'll be enjoying a battle once again. But for now, the gaps have opened up ever so slightly. That won't be helping Alan Matthews' case. Look at the understeer there on his car as he tries to navigate his way around. I think he might have damaged his front wing potentially, maybe over one of those sausage curbs, and that is costing him through this middle sector. Has he got a tyre difference? He's got... No, I think his tyres are all still there. He's got a major car issue or some type of hardware issue. Of course, that is the world of sim racing sometimes. Just like the real world of racing has mechanical failures, so does the world of sim racing. And maybe he's struggling with the setup, maybe struggling with the car in general. For whatever reason, he has absolutely fallen off the face of the earth there, and I'm sure will now be just trying to limp it home. Has he just noticed he's run out of fuel? Unfortunately, don't have the team radio set up just yet. 2023, I know I've promised that for at least 2 seasons now, or we'll get around to it. But Alan Matthews potentially struggling for pegs for a potential multitude of reasons there, really. Will Inglis, though, has said, right then, if I'm not battling with Alan Matthews, I'm battling with Alex Smith. Alex Smith, who would look to be hunting down Barry Clayton at one point. It seems to be Barry Clayton is now pretty much clear of the jaws of Alex Smith, and instead, Alex Smith is going to have to try and keep Will Inglis at bay. I've seen this before, this is almost deja vu. Have a very light kind of greeny hued base car in the lead of the race by about a few seconds, and then you have Will Inglis trying to take P2 away from Alex Smith in the dying stages of the race, and up the inside he goes, late on the brakes, but Alex Smith gets a switchback. He goes too wide on the exit as Will Inglis compromises the exit, trying to box him off early into the corner, and there we see a bit of a switcheroo from Alex Smith. He says, thank you very much, I'm going to get the better exit and take that position back. That's exactly what Turn 1 was designed to do. A fantastic move there as I clob on the microphone against a surface, so apologies for that one. But that was an excellent move from Alex Smith. Will Inglis is going to have to try harder than that if he wants to get P2 from Alex Smith here. Heading then down towards Turn 11. who will win out this time round. Will English should have the upper hand in terms of straight line speed down that long back straight. Will he be using that push-to-pass system as well? Alex Smith will. Will English won't. Where is Will English saving it for? We will try and stay on board with him to figure out where he's using that push-to-pass system. We, of course, only have a minute left on the timer. Can you believe how quickly this race has gone? Entering turn 12 then. He's looking up the inside, is Will English, but Alex Smith knew better than that, knew better than to leave that door open, and defended against him there. So Alex Smith remaining in P2 for the time being. Looking a lot tidier through this Sector 3, it must be said as well. Alex Smith able to keep Will English at bay, but was that a lock-up? I think it might have just been some previous time off, but it looked almost like a lock-up, maybe a bit of understeer creeping in for Alex Smith. Let's see then, can we find out where Wingless is using that push-to-pass system? He might want to think about using it now. He's just gone a little bit wide off the circuit, and that will cost him in his efforts to try and keep Alex Smith honest here. I'll tell you what this is doing now. This is spurring Alex Smith on, and all of a sudden he's catching right back up to Barry Clayton. The top three separated by 2 seconds, and after 25 minutes racing, this is a fantastic effort from all the drivers involved. As we are now on the penultimate lap of this race, all of a sudden Alex Smith is within spitting distance of this race lead. He's within half a second of Barry Clayton at the very last moment. Has Barry Clayton potentially gone too hard too early in this race? Is he starting to lose steam? Is Alex Smith just trying to force a bit of an error, or is he going to have to instead focus his sights on Will English? As Will English has all of a sudden gained substantially towards the end of Sector 1, caught right back up as we head down the back straight now, and is now within 0.3 of a second. Who is using that push-to-pass system now? Alex Smith, we saw flicking it on, as did Barry Clayton. Couldn't quite catch a glimpse of whether Will English was using it as well. He might not need it though, as he has a look up the inside. Is he going to be able to go later on the brakes? No, well defended by Alex Smith here. As we head down towards the final part of this penultimate lap of this race, we'll of course be doing a bit of a parade lap with Barry Clayton, provided that the action isn't too enthralling between the rest of the drivers at this stage in the race. Give mention actually to just on the pace in general how everyone has been this evening. We of course haven't had the widest field spread, but got to see some competitive racing nonetheless. Within a second then, Alex Smith and Barry Clayton. The lead for this race has not looked completely comfortable at any stage, but it certainly looks less comfortable now. This will be a well-deserved victory for Barry Clayton, potentially what we could have seen a bit of a battle for in race 1 as we start this final lap now, heading into turn 1. Less than a second separating these drivers. And Alex Smith echoing Barry Clayton, as does Will English, in fact, all following each other beautifully on the exit of that first corner. Maybe they're just trying to keep their cards close to their chest, play it a little bit safer, and make sure that nothing goes wrong on this very last lap of this race. Be a shame to do all your efforts at such a late stage in the race. As we see, Will English goes a little bit wide, and in fact he's had a lot more pace underneath him now as he has a look up the inside there, side by side with Alex Smith. He's going to get the overtake done heading into turn 11. Fantastic move from Will English there, though. Has he compromised his exit? Because Alex Smith is all of a sudden looking side by side. In fact, I'd argue he's got more pace. He's got the overtake back. The nose is just ahead as we head down towards turn 12. He's got the inside line. Has Alex Smith? Is this going to be a tale of what could have been for Will English as we enter the final part of this race weekend now? Alex Smith takes P2 back. Will English is going to try absolutely anything now, I am sure, at this point, but has to play his cards right. There's contact between the two here, in fact. Is Will English going to wait? I think Will English is going to wait for that one, which is good to see. The rear tyres on Alex Smith's car not looking entirely happy, and as a result, Will English obviously setting off a little bit easier than Alex Smith, but Alex Smith is graciously given the position once again by Will English. Some excellent sportsmanship there. What a nice note, in fact, to end the race on, I would argue. And end the race we will be in just a moment's time as we watch Barry Clayton heading round turn 20 for the final time this evening. Congratulations, Barry. You take the race 2 victory rather, after a fantastic drive. And there we see Alex Smith, Will English battling out through turn 20. One final time, one final move, and it's the one that counted. Will English takes P2. Alex Smith takes P3. What a very close battle that came to. Oh my god, that was almost too close to call there. And Alan Matthews rounds out the field, P4. What a fantastic drive from all involved in the pro running there. And of course we wait for Paul Brady to come home there after what has been a fantastic battle, a gripping battle for Paul Brady. Can he make it home now? He heads into turn 16. He's under so much pressure. He could forget what he's having for tea, or something like that, as he heads into turn 19 now, just about missing that apex. That doesn't really matter, no, he could probably walk the rest of it and would still be classified. As he heads into turn 20, onto the loud pedal once again, flourish to celebrate there. Congratulations, Paul Brady, you take the AM race victory and round out this weekend's running for yourself. Now, donuts. Come on. I think we've just had some from Will Inglis that we might have missed. We got some from Alan Matthews, that is for sure. Thank you, Alan, for some fantastic donuts. Where is that? That is Alan Matthews serving donuts, American style, here at Dakota Turn 5. As we see Alex Smith and Barry Clayton enjoying a bit of a battle. Are they deciding, let's carry on racing? Sure, why not? I've got nowhere else to be. Let's enjoy some more racing action between these two as they head their way back to the pits. And there's no rear tyres left on Alan Matthews' car now. Barry Clayton then leading these two as we head down towards turn 14. And I think Alex Smith is conceding this position potentially to enjoy some donuts instead. A worthy cause, I would argue. That number 10 car then, finishing with a flourish after a fantastic weekend, I'd say, for all involved. That was, I was going to be brutally honest, I was going to be a little bit sceptical of this weekend when I saw the numbers, but it has been arguably, I think, one of the most memorable of the season for me. It has just been close racing, beginning to end. It has been bookended with some very fair racing. It has been very enjoyable to commentate on. I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I've enjoyed commentating it. Thank you very much for watching this evening. We'll catch you next week for the next round of the randomly selected touring car season, and then we'll catch you in 2 weeks' time, in a fortnight's time. And I can tell you that in a fortnight's time we will be enjoying round 9 rather, at Mexico. That should be a fantastic race in these cars as well, another high-speed circuit. So I hope you tune in for those events and have enjoyed this event. I'll catch you then. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to give mention to this just in case. I'll mention this in the chat just in case no one else has tuned in at this point. But I thought it was very much worth tuning into tuning back into the game. Hopefully the server doesn't kick me out. What has happened to the pit crew? What type of pre-race weekend party did they all have that I wasn't invited to, which meant that they are currently all absolutely out for the count? That is, I'm glad we didn't have any pit stops in this race because they might have been waiting a long time. I'm going to call up Ferrari and suggest that they move forward with this plan because it worked well for us. I'm sure they're willing to give anything a go. But that certainly is it for this weekend's racing. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.